We all rely on farmers and ranchers, but farming is riskier than other businesses out there. Crop insurance helps farmers manage their risk. With crop insurance, farmers put skin in the game by paying premiums and shouldering deductibles. That keeps taxpayers from having to pick up the whole bill every time disaster strikes. Today, about 90% of U.S. farmland is insured, providing $100 billion in protection to more than 130 different kinds of crops. It's a testament to the program's success.
Thank you for joining us today for the Meet the Farm Hands video segment. I'm your host, Hannah Pagel, and today we are speaking with Karis Gutter with Corteva. Karis, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been exciting to anticipate this conversation, and I'm looking forward to it.
So to kick off the interview, let's just go back to the very beginning. Kind of explain how you made your way out to DC and what got you into the agriculture industry.
All right, so my journey begins in Mississippi. In Mississippi, ag is the culture. I'm originally from Terry, Mississippi. My family moved there in the early to mid 80s, and I grew up there. My dad was the last generation of Gutters who were tied to the farm. He was told to move as far and as fast away from agriculture as possible, and so he reared his family just outside of Jackson. But in addition to being in that Terry, Mississippi area, my roots are in Grenada, Mississippi. That's where my maternal grandparents are, and they farm, as well as my paternal grandparents down in Tylertown. My grandfather worked offshore on an oil rig, and he had a farm. What would happen is he'd spend 2 weeks on the oil rig and 2 weeks on the farm. So those 2 weeks where he was on the rig, my dad and I tended to the farm. So if I had known I'd have a career in agriculture, I probably would have been much more, intentional. I would have paid attention. But you tried your best to get as far and as fast away from hard work as possible. I attended Jackson State University and majored in political science. And so I thought I would have a career in politics or attend law school. I joined the United States Marine Corps after my freshman year in college. And so I had a number of different life choices that I was contemplating. But after undergrad, I knew that I needed a job, and so I took on a role working for my local county supervisor, and that was my first foray into government. After my first year working at the local Hinds County Board of Supervisors as a special projects officer, I was contacted by my local congressman. He offered me an opportunity to move to Washington, D.C. And so that's kind of how I made it to Washington. But after I got to Washington, I realized that Congressman Benny Thompson served on the House Agriculture Committee. He was the ranking member of the Specialty Crops Committee, subcommittee, and so that was my introduction into ag policy.
Okay. You said you were in the Marines, so thank you for your service.
Semper Fi.
So I guess, how would you say the Marines prepared you for work out here in DC?
Wow. The discipline. Takes quite a bit of discipline to stay focused, motivated, and focused on any specific discipline. And so the biggest thing I would say that the Marine Corps offered was those levels of discipline. I would also say the billet structure in the Marine Corps, the ability to both serve and lead. It's a skill that you have to use each and every day here in Washington. And so being able to acquire those skills in the Marine Corps, it definitely prepared me. I came out here at a very young age, 23 years old. And so being the last voice in the ear of a congressman before a pivotal decision, it's a great responsibility, but it's also a daunting task. And so the Marine Corps definitely prepared me for that.
Now, were you in the Marine Corps while you were also working as a staffer on the Hill? How did you balance that? Those are two big commitments.
And so I served as a reservist, and so I had the ability to work as a weekend warrior, so to speak, where I'd fulfill my assignments 1 weekend out of the month, 2 weeks out of the year. I served right here at Bolling Air Force Base for a time, driving Navy corpsman and as a field radio operator. So exciting experience in the Marine Corps. Gave me an opportunity to conduct a number of humanitarian missions. But it was also an opportunity when you're a staffer on the Hill, you've got a portfolio of many issues amongst agriculture. Defense and military was one of those issues that I managed for the congressman.
Okay. So from Capitol Hill, you made your way over to USDA. What made you make that switch?
Well, I spent about 7 years on the Hill. I worked on a few farm bills prior to moving to the administration, but in 2008 there was a consequential election and it gave me an opportunity. And so I went to serve in the Obama administration and I served at the Farm Service Agency. It was an opportunity to put to work some of the experience that I gained on the Hill. You have fun tinkering with ideas, seeing if you can get them passed into law. It gave me the opportunity to implement those bad ideas that we came up with on Capitol Hill.
So at USDA, you served as the Military Veterans Agriculture Liaison, and correct me if I'm wrong, you were the first person to serve in that capacity? Is that right?
That's correct. So the 2014 Farm Bill created the role. So when I first got to USDA, I moved to the Farm Service Agency and I was the deputy administrator there. It gave me a chance to work alongside some fantastic professionals. When I got there, I started working alongside 51 state executive directors at FSA. Those state executive directors boast the ranks of key professionals who serve in each one of the states. They're recommended by their local members of Congress and their senators. And I had the job of herding cats. That experience kind of did prepare me to move into the Secretary's office, and so shifted there after a number of months and served as a senior advisor to Secretary Vilsack, where he then tapped me to move into the Deputy Undersecretary for Farm and Foreign Services role and also be the very first Military Veterans Ag Liaison after the passage of that 2014 Farm Bill. Had the responsibility of standing up programs for military veterans, communicating services and options for veterans. From my time at the Farm Service Agency, we had some unique experiences creating the microloan programs, and so ensuring that military veterans have expedited access to services and support, ensuring that county offices are prepared to deal with some of the unique circumstances of military veterans. That was one of the first responsibilities that I had when I was tapped as the very first Military Veterans Ag Liaison at USDA.
So kind of walk me through, what were some like the lessons learned? I mean, if you're the first person in that capacity, you know, what challenges did you have to overcome?
Well, the beauty of it is you don't know what you don't know, and there's no precedent. And so everything that you do is precedent setting. Mistakes, no one knows about them because there's no right or wrong way to do it. But the lesson learned for me was to take advantage of every resource and opportunity that we knew about, ranging from the FSA programs that I had once managed when there, taking advantage of the crop insurance programs and how veterans can get access there, but also looking at how best to support military veterans in their communities. County offices sit strategically all across the country, and I had the foresight and know-how to ensure that not only are the county offices prepared, but I also had some instincts, having served, at what are some of the unique needs of military veterans. Veterans are strategically positioned to really be entrepreneurs. They've got that do-it-yourself spirit, and they're natural farmers at heart. And so it was a fun opportunity to not only be the first, but set up some meaningful opportunities, ones that I look back on and see that still exist today.
Mm-hmm. When you think about your time working for the Department of Agriculture, what's a lasting memory you have or a story you can share about like working with Secretary Vilsack?
Well, we've got many. We had several opportunities to talk sports. Mr. Vilsack's an avid football fan, and his beloved Pittsburgh Steelers and my New York Jets are not rivals, but we definitely poke fun a lot around the fact that my team never won and his team always won. I remember after the football game between the Steelers and the Ravens, they played in the Super Bowl as an example, and Mr. Vilsack's Steelers lost, and I had the unique experience of planting a Ray Lewis poster in his chair. We definitely blamed it on Michael Skuse, who was our undersecretary at the time, as Mr. Skuse was a huge Baltimore Ravens fan.
Okay, funny. So who would you say has been a role model in your career?
I've had several models to model not only my career, but some of my professional activities after. I look back over the course of my career. I mentioned my roots coming from Jackson State and Mississippi. Some of my earliest mentors were my professors, the McLemore brothers, Eugene and Leslie McLemore. They were founding members of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, just advocates pushing for the right to vote, the right to access for the most underserved communities across the country. I made my way to D.C. and working alongside and with Congressman Benny Thompson was fantastic. Most of what I learned about ag early on, it came from those experiences and opportunities that he gave. But then I had the opportunity to have access to some of the strongest professionals in all of ag when I served in the Obama administration, working with Secretary Vilsack, having access to Krista Harden as an example, Jim Miller, who spent decades on the Hill writing ag policy, serving under him. The incomparable Michael Skuse, who was the undersecretary after Jim, being his deputy, I got to serve with him every day. So those are a few. But then I think about all of the state directors, state executive directors who had served as secretaries of ag, who had served as senior advisors to governors. Speaking, of those, I'm thinking Adrian Polanski or Bruce Nelson, just phenomenal figures and role models that I continue to carry with me today.
Gotcha. So I kind of want to talk a little bit more about the Black professionals in food and agriculture. So you are a founding member and a board member. Can you walk us through what was your thought process in wanting to start that organization? And, can you talk a little bit more about what it's like to bring to help bring more diversity into the agriculture industry?
So about 2 years ago, a number of colleagues and I continued to have conversations. Like many, we were kind of confined to our basements. We were hit and stricken by a pandemic, but we were also watching TV and the unfortunate news of seeing Black people lose their lives at the hand of law enforcement. And so it was a tough struggle and conversation for a lot of us. As a parent, I would also say I remember my own son, right? He was turning 16 at the time. And he was very excited about being able to get his driver's license. And I'm terrified for multiple number of reasons. One, he's going to be out there on the road driving. But second to that is having to have the talk with a young Black son in this country. So that's what was happening as some of the backdrop. We were having those active discussions while in our basements, but also having great opportunities and careers in ag. And to a person, we would ask ourselves, what more can we and should we be doing? And that's where we said we need to organize. We need to create a greater space and a number of opportunities for other professionals like us to mature, to grow professionally. And that's why we created the organization. So as we launched, we basically on LinkedIn, we penned an op-ed. We put out a charge and a challenge to the administration to be committed to it. But we also said, if you're in a similar position and situation as us, if you want to participate, if you want to join, let's go. And we had more than 500 people begin to raise their hand and say, we too share this very same experience. We're interested in it. And so it's been an exciting journey to build something very special.
Mm-hmm. Since starting that organization, what would you say we've learned thus far?
What we've learned is we've got a long ways to go, and the need is great. But we've got to start somewhere. And so creating a safe space to not only have the conversation, but also begin to bat around ideas, just simple ideas of what we do about it. That's been an incredible learning experience. Everyone's going to come at these types of issues from a different angle. They've got a multitude of different opinions. We respect all of those opinions. We create the safe space for those opinions. But what we've learned is there is no one size fits all when it comes to responding to these issues and these challenges. And we've got to stay committed that this is not just a short term or a one-stop proposition. This is a long-term commitment and a long-term challenge that we're going to have to stick to it and be committed to.
So you said one way we can move forward is to continue having conversations. I feel that there's that can be very difficult to approach that conversation. How would you encourage members in the agriculture community to approach conversations around diversity?
I think you've got to be committed to it, number one. I think we every day find examples where diversity exists in our own lives and communities. I think what's always been natural in agriculture is the rich diversity of agriculture. When I think about what most farmers do, they diversify their operations. I would say the exact same thing and same approach to the conversation here. Most farmers, they don't just go all in with one commodity. They may not even go all in with one brand. That's in large part, they want to ensure that they don't have too much vested interest in any one entity. I'd say the exact same type of approach could be a way of approaching the conversation around diversity and inclusion within the scope of agriculture. I'd even say go a step further and being intentional about the discussion. It may be uncomfortable, but it's also a necessary piece of growing a business.
Mm-hmm. So I hear you have a big passion for mentoring young professionals in this industry. Can you tell me a little bit more about what got you passionate around this?
Well, coming from the background that I come from, folks took a chance on me. And the one thing that has always been instilled is paying it forward. And so for me, that small piece is something that I'm very excited about. I would also say that early on in my time on the Hill, I had the opportunity to interact with a number of interns and to see an intern either fail or succeed. It's been fascinating. It's been most exciting to see them come back and tell you the story of how they finished law school, or that someone's a circuit court judge down in Mississippi or something of that sort. That's the exciting part of it. Every now and again, you do have to have the tough conversation of, hey, I've had to move back home and start over. That's not the worst thing in the world. It's been exciting to just see the maturity of a number of professionals throughout my time, and it's what really does drive and push me.
Mm-hmm. So we've talked a lot about your career thus far. Let's get to know Karis outside of work. So just to start off, just tell me a little bit more about your family.
So I've got 3 kids. My oldest just finished high school. The one that I was just telling you about 2 years ago, we were terrified of putting out there on the road. We now have to put him out in the world and see if he succeeds. My 2 youngest, my 12-year-old son is in middle school, and my daughter some point will join him soon. She's 10. My puppy, Kodak, enjoys playing Frisbee, and I've got a lovely wife who's been my bride of 18 years here now.
All right. So you mentioned football, but what other hobbies can we find you doing outside of work?
Well, if I'm not working, I'm probably on my Kamado Joe, Big Joe smoker. I've got either ribs or pork shoulders or a chicken on the rotisserie. So I enjoy grilling. I enjoy cutting my lawn. I'm a southern guy, and so as you can probably imagine, spending time outdoors on my riding lawn tractor is something that just gives me my piece of serenity. But I enjoy not only grilling, I enjoy the lawn work. I also enjoy collecting bourbon, specialty bourbon. I have to support the industry. Being at a company like Corteva, corn-based products is enjoyable every now and again.
That's right. Do you have a favorite brand or?
So I enjoy the Willett brand. I had the chance of getting to know Sam Willett a while back, and now that I've tried his family's special reserve here, it's something that's at the top of my list.
Yeah, we interviewed Sam, and he brought that up, so it's good to know that it's being enjoyed by many people here in the agriculture industry. So I guess, before we wrap up the interview, let's just kind of, reflect a little bit more. If you could go back to day one of your career, knowing everything that you know now, what advice would you tell yourself?
Wow. Step 1, take plenty of photos. You're going to have a number of incredible opportunities, and you're probably going to want to capture some of these moments. Take more vacations. I'm a workaholic, and I don't, do nearly as many vacations as I probably should. The last one would probably be pamper yourself. Get routine massages and even pedicures. I was a little eerie of the pedicure thing at one point, but they've paid off.
Very nice. Well, Karis, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, thanks, Hannah.